Hello and welcome back to another daily cribbage. We are going to play a slow, relaxed game against the computer and try and explain everything that we're thinking about, try and play as strong and as principled as possible. Let's see what happens against the impossible computer. So, we start off by cutting an ace, which is excellent, gives us some good winning chances already. We've got an interesting starting hand as well. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, and we have a flush 3, 4, 5, 7. So I like to start with my flushes. There are a lot of different things you could start with for this hand. But let's start by looking at the flush. How much is it worth? Well, 3, 4, 5, 7. It contains a run of 3. It contains a 15. And it improves a lot as well. And it's a flush. So what does that give us total? Well, 4 plus 2 plus 3. So 9 points for the hand. And it improves very often to at least another 2 points because of our 5. So we're expecting around 11 points, and 6, 7 in the crib could be worth quite a bit if we hit an 8, and it could be worth basically 0. It's a fairly high variance discard 6, 7. Probably the next thing to consider is 5, 6, double 7. That is a nice double run. We get to throw away 3, 4. So 3, 4 should be slightly better in the crib, I think, than 6, 7. They're somewhat comparable, so they're 3, 4 is also connected like 6, 7. 3, 4 is a lower set of numbers, so there are more ways to turn that into a 15. But if our opponent throws away lots of low cards themselves, for instance, if they threw away double ace, then maybe these cards are all too low and they don't even make 15 when you add them all together. But in general, I think 3, 4 is going to score a little bit more than 6, 7. And what else is there to consider? Well, the middle part of our hand is a 4, 5, 6. And 4, 5, 6 is nice to keep together because it's not only a run, but it also has the 15. So there's a couple of things we can do with that. Well, but the natural one is to add on the 3 to make it a slightly longer run, and we get to throw away double 7. And that's the thing that I'm really leaning towards here. Haven't thought too much about the playability of these hands. I think that if you want to think about playability, then you want to keep a wide range of numbers. So 3, 4, 5, 6, the last hand that we thought about. This one probably plays the worst because all the numbers are really clumped together. We don't have any 7s to do any kind of jumping. So if our opponent leads a 4, say, then we probably just have to pair the 4. And if they triple us, we do have an out there because we can play our 3. And by playing the 3, we get 15, but it does open us up to exchanging a lot of points with our opponent. And it would be somewhat of a disaster if our opponent was able to trade a lot of points with us and manage to get to their first milestone before we get to do that ourselves as the next pawn. So with all that said, I think the playability is, we don't have to worry about it too much here. All these hands are quite similarly playable. 3, 4, 5, 7 is a little bit nicer as well because it does give us other options. But I also like playing with 4, 5, 6. It can be very nice. If our opponent just has a hand of 10s, we can go 5 and 6. And against very cautious opponents, we can go 5, 6 and trap late 5s with the 3, 4. So I quite like that. So I'm just going to throw away the double 7. So how much is this worth? Just to check. Well, we've got a run of 4, which is worth 4. We've got a 15, which is 6. And then we're throwing away a pair of 7s, which is 9. Which isn't, well, okay, I guess it's pretty similar to the flush. Do I really want to give away so many points just because it's a flush? Or is it worth keeping the flush over this? Seems quite tricky. The nice thing about keeping 4, 5, 6 in hand is that it can improve with 9 cards to something that's worth at least 12 points, right? If we cut a 4, 5, or a 6, then we get a really, really good hand, 12 points at least. And if we're keeping the 3, then it's going to be worth at least 14 points. So, whereas the 3, 4, 5, 7, if we cut a 4, 5, 6, I guess the 6 is quite good, but it's not as good in these hands. I'm just going to go double 7 and we'll have a look afterwards at what the computer says. We get a 3, which is really nice. Opponent does lead the 4, which is probably one of the worst leads for us. We do have the option to actually play a 3 here, but I think it's fine to just go in. Oh, actually, I'm very tempted to play 3 here. Why do I want to play a 3 here and not get 2 points? The point is we're playing defensively. We already know that we have a really good hand. Our hand is worth 12 points, right? We've got a double run. No, it's worth more than 12 points. We've got a double run of length 4, that's worth 10. And we've got 4, 5, 6, that gives us 12. And we've got 3, 3, 4, 5, that's another 15. So we've got 14 points in hand. 14 points is already pretty much at the first milestone, and we've thrown away double 7 in the crib, don't forget that, so we're already at 16 points. So taking 2 extra points here is not that important. I'd rather play something safe, so if I had kept a 7, I would very happily play a 7 here and keep the 4 for later, because if our opponent plays another 4 to make 15, then we can double the 4. Because our opponent doesn't have triple 4 as much as they do have double 4. But I think we probably just have to pair this 4. I think it ends up being a little bit safer than playing the 3. Why is that? It's because I'm more worried about our opponent's hands that are scoring really big, that are going to make it to 18. So double runs, they involve, say, 2, 3, 4. I guess some of those double runs do have double 4 in them, but not all of them. So there's a chance that our opponent doesn't have double 4. Let's see what happens. Okay, instead they just have the 5, and I would really like to play, well, our opponent's showing us 4, 7, so it does take them away from hands that could have really, really powerful double runs or quadruple runs. So my instinct is to play nice and safe and play the 3. And I don't see why not. I think that this is very fine, and we're in a good position. After a lot of our opponent's cards here, we're going to be able to play our 5 and 6. But in this case, opponents paired our 3, which I didn't expect too much actually. But now the opponent is showing us some more cards, we start to see a pattern. They're showing us 4 of clubs, 7 of clubs, 3 of clubs. So it's very possible their opponent just has a flush. If they have a 5 of clubs, that could be something they have a lot of the time here. Definitely 2s. Well, 2 of clubs for sure, but if you have 2, 3, 4 in your hand and this 2 is not a club, then it's quite a poor choice to keep the 7. Pretty much any other card is better than keeping the 7 with 2, 3, 4, because the 7 doesn't make 15 with 2, 3, 4. 8 makes 15 with the 3, 4. 6s make 15 with the 2, 3 and the 4 all together. Definitely any 10 makes 15. 9s as well. Yeah, basically everything is better than keeping the 7. So I suspect that our opponent doesn't have a 2 here. And I suspect that our opponent does have more 8s as well. 8s make a lot of sense. And so do the 5s. If our opponent has 4, I'll be very happy. And if our opponent does have 4 here, then I'm happy to give them a couple of extra points. Don't have a 4. Instead, they have a Queen of Clubs. Okay, so we do dodge quite a few bullets there because that flush hand is not as strong as a lot of the other hands that they have very commonly there. The computer hates our discard of double 7. Why is that? It's because it really loves the flush. It loves the flush a lot. It says that the crib is worth a bit less, clearly, because our double 7 is worth 2 points automatically. But 6, 7 does improve. Maybe we'll look at this later because it's quite tricky to explain now, but 7, 7 has higher variance in the crib. 6, 7 improves more commonly with higher frequency. In second place, it does like the double run, and third place was what we kept. But I don't know. I think that what we kept is pretty reasonable as well. Maybe maybe we'll come back to this again. Maybe I'm losing my mind. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this one looks nice and simple. We've got a very long double run, and we have ace to 4 with 2 aces and a 6. So we can either split up our double run in some way or just discard 4, 6. It's a little bit scary to discard 4, 6 because our opponent will discard a lot of 5s. If we don't want to discard 4, 6, probably the next best option is to discard ace 6. Because ace to 4 always improves. It often improves to 8 points. And ace 6 is a very safe thing to put into the crib. If you wanted to do something that wasn't that, then, well, I can't really think of a situation where you would want to do that. So we'll keep ace, ace, 2, 3, discard the 4, 6, and this often makes 12 points. So let's see if we do that. We get one of the worst cuts for us. This is probably the worst cut. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, when we're playing this hand, we want to try and make 15 as much as possible. So I want to lead either the 2 or the 3. And I'll keep the aces around for later. Maybe we can get some points for a pair out of it. For instance, if we play 2, opponent goes 10, we go 3, opponent goes another 10, might be left on 25, and our opponent might have some big cards left. Okay, so situation's changed already. Opponent shows us a 7, so we expect hands that have 7s and 8s a lot of the time, and of those hands as well, we expect them to be having some runs in them, like 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9, that kind of thing. And we also think that our opponent might have multiple 7s, because maybe you want to undouble your cards, and it keeps playability in your hand. So I'm still very happy to try and get double ace, am I? No, it's very hard to get that. Our cards are too low in value, so it's very hard for our opponent. After we play this 3, the total is 12, and our opponent would have to have a hand full of 10s, maybe a 9, in order for us to be in a position where we're going to end up getting our aces to pair. So I think it's fine to just play an ace here, and we'll pay out some of the 5s that our opponents will have. So our opponent's shown a 7, 8. This is very natural. So once our opponent shows a 7, 8, it opens up the possibility for the rest of the cards in their hand. So they have, there's quite a high chance they have some 10s here, so I'm not very interested in making the total 21. So I'll just play this ace. Our opponent shows us more cards that make total sense, a 6. And they have a 3, which I didn't expect because the 3 doesn't combo with their hand immediately, but the 5 does help, and our opponent gets a massive crib, which we somewhat contributed to. So the second place discard, let me click. A6 is good because it's fairly safe in the crib, although the difference between 4-6 and 8-6 is apparently only about 0.7. And I think that this difference being quite low is mostly down to the fact that 4-6, when your opponent doesn't throw away a 5 or get a 5 in the crib, it doesn't improve very often. you could imagine situations where your opponent, say, throws away 2 and a 10 or something, and the crib ends up being all even numbers. That's not going to make many points. But when it does make points, it makes a lot of points. We say that's high variance, and we fell victim to that today. Okay, and now we've got some interesting choices. So we've got a double 5 with lots of 10s and an ace. So if this was our opponent's crib, then we would keep our double 5 and 10 jack. That's the way to keep the most points in hand right now. And throwing away ace king is a very safe discard into the crib. Because it's our own crib, we have the opportunity to throw a 5 into the crib. So we could throw away ace 5, keeping 6 points for ourselves and putting a 5 into the crib, which is quite nice. But it's very hard to say no to 10 points. It's not worth giving up those 4 points to make a better crib. And we get an extra point off the top, which is quite nice. And here I'm very happy to play out a 5 because we've cut an 8, so opponent has fewer 8s in hand, and it also allows us to offload one of our 5s nice and early. So I think this is good. Opponent showing us a jack. There's no point in not pairing this jack. Always take these 2 points. Opponent probably has some 3s left here because ace 2-3 is very common. But instead, our opponent has a 2, which allows us to play out our 5-10 for a few extra points. So we make it now to our next milestone at 44, and we exceed it by 6 points. And our opponent is trailing behind at 36 after a fairly weak hand. Yeah, it's very hard to say no to 10 points like this, and the 10 jack is the best way to keep these 10 points because we can improve to runs if we cut 9s and queens. I didn't say that at the time, but I was thinking. Okay. Alright, next up we have a hand that really doesn't have much going on. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, jack, king. We've made our milestone at 44. So we're very happy here to just take it easy. We don't need to get much out of this hand, but we might as well keep as many points as we can, and I'm leaning towards throwing away 10 king. I think it's better than some of the other. So the other options include, say, 8 king or 6 king as well. I think every discard that we want to consider is going to involve the king. 2 king is, I'm least interested in that because the 2 improves our playability a lot. It gives us some small control, a fine control over the value, maybe towards the end of the play when we get close to 31. It'd be good to keep at least one of 6 and 8. If we kept both 6 and 8, then it does allow our hand to improve a lot in value if we ever cut a 7. So that was the reason why I thought about keeping throwing away 10 king. But I think 8 king is also pretty fine. And the idea is that if you cut 9s and queens, we make a run. And also the 3s are pretty good as well because we have 2 10s in hand. It's not as playable because, of course, 2 10s don't give us as much flexibility, and these 10s, 10 jack are connected. So there's a chance that we get trapped into some kind of run that we can't escape from. So I'm just going to go 10 king here. I think is very close to 8 king. Opponent cuts a 5 again as the dealer, which you don't like to see it, but it does happen. So I'm thinking about leading the 6 or the 8. I want to keep the 2 for later. I think it's a good tool to have on the play. Can also lead the jack, but I'm also happy to keep the jack in the back as a surprise. Our opponent might not expect us to have jacks when we lead an 8 or a 6. I think if we lead an 8, then the jack is a little more surprising because 6, 9, 10 jack is also a very common hand. So I'll lead the 8. If our opponent goes 7, then we've got an interesting decision. I'm tempted to play out 6 now, with the idea of trying to play out our magic 3-card 16 with the 6 and the 2. So if our opponent has a 5 and only 10s, they'll be forced to play the 5. However, this does backfire a lot. So if our opponent has, say, ace 4 or 2-3 in their hand, then they're going to get a lot of points out of us right now. Okay, and then we've just got our jack. This is terrifying. Opponent does get 3 points for that run. We do give up a lot of points. And our opponent shows us that they had a double run, they hit the 5, and this game has all of a sudden gone completely in our opponent's favor, because they are now ready to hit the next milestone at the end of this round. So what can we do about that? I think it's simply a case of throwing away queen-queen. And by throwing away queen-queen, we keep 2 points in the crib. Okay, so the other discard is 6-9, I guess. And the point of discarding 6-9 is that we keep open the double run in our hand. Normally I lean towards throwing away queen-queen because there are only 4 jacks left in the deck, and I'd much rather have the playability. I think that can be worth quite a lot of points. And if I do hit, so I want to say compare hitting a jack with, well, I don't think there's actually any redeeming cuts here. So I think it's just 6-9, although the only problem is that queen, queen, king, 4 plays extremely poorly on the play. So, but if we do hit our jack, then it does put us back into a reasonable position. Looking down at such few points, feels like it's going to be a very rough round. Let's go 6-9, let's keep as many points as possible. An ace is excellent. Ace I'm very happy about. I'm not so happy about our opponent leading an ace, but we can start by playing out one of our queens. It's very hard to finish and have 2 10s left that you pair. You need to have maybe a hand that's all 10s in order for that to happen. So I think it's okay to split up the queens here. Okay, opponent shows us ace 2, which is sort of terrifying because if our opponent has a 3, then they've got a double run with the top card and they have a whole nother card which will probably combo. Okay, they've shown us triple ace, hopefully not a 3. Okay, they have a very strong 15-point hand, takes them up to 79, which, okay. Alright, we make the milestone at 71 behind our opponent, who is 9 points ahead of where they need to be. So, we look down at a hand which is mostly spades. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, king of spades and queen of hearts. So if we want to keep the most number of points, then we throw away the queen, king, and we keep all the even numbers. It keeps us 4 points immediately, and if we cut any odd number, any ace, 3, 5, 7, or 9, we start getting points. So, any other discards to consider here? If we want to play a little bit more safe, we could throw away 8 queen. 8 queen does keep the flush, so we get to keep 4 points at least, and it does keep us a hand that improves on many cuts. But the unfortunate thing is that, well, 8 queen, so I think it's between these 2 cuts. I would quite like the other cut, like the other discard might be 6 queen here. So what are the differences? 6 queen, 8 queen, queen king. Queen king gives the most points away in the crib because whenever our opponent throws away a jack, then they're going to make a run. And it has kind of high variance as well, throwing away queen king, because if our opponent throws away something that combos to make 5 or throws away a 5, then they're going to get a lot of 15s out of it. So we can mitigate that by throwing away 8 queen or 6 queen. However, Queen King does have the highest potential to make 0 in our opponent's crib, and that's kind of useful for us at this particular stage. Our opponent is ahead of where they need to be, and this would be a very nice defensive play for us if our opponent gets a very low scoring crib. So I think I'm leaning towards Queen King here. We need to start getting a little bit lucky in order to get back into this game, and I think that this is an easy way to start making that happen. The jack cut is really awful. Not only is it 2 points for our opponent, it's an extra 3 points because of the run. Oh dear. Leaning towards leading a 6 or a 4. 8 could also be led as well. I don't think it's worth leading the 2. It doesn't really do too much. So I'll start off with the 6. And we have to take this 15. We need the points. And we take this pair because we need the points. Opponent shows us ace to ace king, which we're very happy to see. That's only 2 points. Let's see how many more points our opponent has in the crib. No, nothing else, so very happy there. If we compare Queen King to 8 Queen, which was the second one that the computer likes, then yes, we sacrifice a few points in our hand, about 0.6 points there, but we make the crib a little bit better by about 0.3 points. Okay. So, what's next? Well, we see a couple of different double runs. We've got 9 double 10 jack or double 10 jack queen. So would we rather throw away 4-9 or 4 queen into the crib? I think that 4-9 is going to, on average, give us slightly more points in the crib. So I'm leaning towards that slightly. The only problem is that double 10 jack queen plays really horribly. The only thing that we can try and do with double 10 jack queen is to try and leave ourselves with 2 10s, try and get a pair, which we can definitely do. Could try also keeping 9 double 10 jack, and the point is that by keeping 9 double 10 jack, if we ever, once we go through the play the first time, we get to 31, if we have to lead a card, then we have the option of leading a 9. And leading a 9 is nice because it means our opponent's 5s don't get extra value. But for now, I'm just going to discard the 4-9, and we cut a 5. This is... I was going to say that this is excellent for us. It's usually pretty good when you cut a 5 as the dealer. It gives us a 17-point hand, so we're on 97. But unfortunately, it does give our opponent more points. And our opponent is 9 points away from their next milestone, and it would be really nice if they didn't make it. So we'll play the queen, and we can offload our jack now. When I say offloading the jack, it means that it gives our opponent no opportunity to pair our jack anymore. Okay, hopefully, let's hope it's not a 5 or a 2. 5 would have been really bad, but double 3-4, double 3-4-9 hits the 5 for 12 points. And we are now all of a sudden all square at 100 points. And you can see that, yes, double 10 jack queen and 9 double 10 jack. In the eyes of this particular evaluator, have the same score in hand. The cribs are slightly different. Yeah, the 9 gives us slightly more score, but they're pretty similar. Right, it's 100 points each. Our opponent's the dealer. Opponent is in really excellent shape. One of the main things that we can do here is just score a lot of points. And the idea is that if we manage to get into the realms of 116, 17, 18, then we might be able to go out on the next play. So keeping these 8 points seems like a good way to do that, and we have some outs. If we cut a jack, cut a 10, we're going to do pretty well. If even a cut of a 5 might not be so bad here. So I don't see any other, the only other play I see is ace queen, but I really like the potential of cutting a jack or a 10. Cutting an ace on top, really bad. I don't know how many times I've said that so far, but it feels like it's been a lot. Let's lead a 10. And yeah, I think we just have to pair this. Hopefully no sixes. Okay, 4-4-2. So that's actually quite fortunate for us. 5-4-4-2 is only 4 points. Opponent does get 4 points in the crib. So there's a chance that our opponent doesn't make it. There are only so many 8-point hands, and assuming that we get a favourable cut, something that's not, say, a 5, a low card, maybe some very nondescript 10, then we might be in with a good chance. We have no possibility of going out on this play, so I'm very happy to just throw away 10 jack, which is the best discard anyway. And we're going to try and stop our opponent getting points. So in order to do that, you would never play the 6 here. You could make an argument for playing a 2, sometimes a 4, but I think the king is extremely safe. And we have to play the 2. So, opponent's shown us 8-10. And our opponent's now shown us a double run, so it's over. There is nothing we can do. And they even had the 6 as well. So that was a real tough game. Real tough day at the office. We have, overall, our opponent did get, I think, quite a lot of very favourable cuts. It didn't really go our way. We had a positional advantage at one point, but we didn't manage to get to 70 in time. But I hope that all the insights and how we played it out was useful and interesting. And I will see you next time for another daily cribbage. Bye for now.